stepping back and stroking two. Bogdanovich thinking about a three. There it is. Yes!
See it again. No double team help, and Embiid takes it right to the rack.
Embiid, step back, jumper, you bet!
Here he is again. The Euro step there. Embiid getting Gobert in a fight.
What's going on, everybody? This is a Monday afternoon episode of the Feed to Embiid. I am, as always, your host, Austin Krell. I have a good buddy of mine. He is a fellow writer. He does great work for Liberty Ballers. Dave Early. Dave, how are you today?
I'm doing well, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thanks for coming on. So I'm looking here. You're the lead voice and associate editor at Liberty Ballers for SB Nation. Past byline, Sixers Wire. So that's where Kai Carlin is right now.
Yeah.
Philly Mag, Fansided, Maxim, and now Nick Film School.
That's right. Or no, formerly. I haven't written for them in a long time, although I think they might take a submission.
Gotcha. Okay. So you had yourself here, really a career of a 40-year-old, but there's no way you're 40.
I'm still in my 30s, but I guess I've done some as many contributions as I could to get like a sample. I have some others that aren't as big name, but
okay. Well, so my question to you is this: first off, so are you from New York and you're a Sixers fan? Or are you from Philly and you're a Knicks fan? I'm not quite sure.
I'm born and raised in New York.
Okay.
I moved to Philly and I lived there for about 5 years, and I was writing for Philly Mag. I was interning and writing and reporting for them. And, I started listening to all the broadcasts, and I got to interview Mark Zumoff.
Okay.
And I just started listening to him every day, and I kind of wanted to do something in sports. I didn't really know if I wanted to be like a broadcaster per se, but I listened to him all the time, and he won me over. And then the process was sort of like sealed the deal for my conversion, because I was at peak disgust from growing up as a Knicks fan and seeing what had happened. Like, at some point, you just wanted them to sell the team so badly.
Right.
And then I saw the Sixers doing everything I wanted a team to always do, and I was like, why couldn't the Knicks just do this? Just go get a few of the best players at the top of the draft, and let's go. So it was a combination of living in Philly, Mark, and Sam Hinkie's process.
Okay. So are you with Liberty Ballers like full time? That's your job.
It's not a full-time job, but yeah, that's a job.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So now that we've cleared up all curiosities from me on my front,
Sure.
we're gonna dive into the Sixers here.
Sure.
Now we're gonna start it off with, and this is a bit of an odd question, so bear with me here.
Okay.
But if there's one thing about this team that just sort of annoys you, if you will, like you see it, you don't get it. It's not something that necessarily is like the most like controversial thing, or maybe even the most consequential thing, but you just don't get it. What would that be?
I would say Ben Simmons' usage, half-court usage.
Okay.
Doc Rivers has done such a great job, and we can't knock it. They're the 1 seed. Joel Embiid had, on a per-game basis, an MVP season. And he restored Tobias Harris to the guy a lot of us thought we were getting when they traded for him. But he has not had that same impact on Ben Simmons, or you can reverse it and say Ben Simmons hasn't had that an impact that we know or we've seen at times under Doc. He's had sort of an up and down season, and it was a big deal when Brett Brown left him in the dunker spot for like a whole series against Toronto, so much that it was talked about so much that people speculated that's why Jimmy Butler's not even here. And that's essentially what he's doing now. He brings it up a lot of the time. He sets like a half-hearted pick for Seth or Toby, or he'll throw an entry pass to Joe, and then he'll just sort of fade harmlessly into his dunker spot. And he could go 3 quarters doing that. Obviously, he's going to get some in transition, but I don't understand the half-court usage of Ben Simmons this season, and it really annoys me.
Okay. That's a good one. It's a really good one. Now, mine is something that has sort of arisen in the second half of the season after the trade deadline. That's been the mixture of George Hill with Shake Milton in the second unit. And this is sort of like, and this is where we're going to get into the the topics that I sent you. But George Hill, I for some reason I keep feeling like, hey, this guy should have the keys to the car. He should be running the offense. He's a veteran point guard. He's he knows how to operate that position. He's actually a fairly decent playmaker. The offense seems to flow a little more naturally and a little more stably, if you will.
Yeah.
With him on the court as the point guard, and yet they traded for him. They didn't give up a ransom for him, but they gave up Tony Bradley, who's having a nice season, and now they're using him off ball with Shake, getting the lion's share of the on ball play, at least from my eye test. However, cleaning the glass would say that isn't the case and would make me look dumb. With cleaning the glass, actually, apparently George Hill has been way, way better as the off-ball man than he has as the ball handler. Something that I wouldn't have guessed. He has played 88% of his minutes with the Sixers as the point guard. So it means the sample size of point to shooting guard is a little bit unbalanced because he's dominating his usage at the ball handler spot, but the team is averaging 108.4 points per 100 with him as the ball handler and 117.5 points per 100 with him as the off-ball guard. So maybe I'm not seeing something. Maybe my eye test is flawed. Maybe I need glasses. What do you think of him as the splitting those duties with Shake as the off guard versus the ball handler?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about George also, and I am flummoxed a little bit at his usage as well. I think I came at it from an alternative perspective where traditionally he is a good off-ball guard, and I kind of expected him to get a lot of run with Ben Simmons, but he's gotten like almost none, which I find very weird. Mm-hmm. The one duo that Doc really likes to stagger is Simmons and George Hill, which doesn't feel realistic to me. If they were to win a massive playoff series, I'm not talking about like the Hornets. I'm talking about like if they were to knock off the Bucks or the Nets, I would think that you're going to need a steady diet of Hill and Simmons in a lineup together, because for a lot of the reasons you're saying, Hill is really good. I mean, he's a player that we expect to have a high impact. He's one of the few players who's always better when the playoff starts than he was in the regular season. And he's such a veteran with a nice jump shot that with a very good wingspan that you want him out there for, at least 20, 25 minutes, I would think. But why is he averaging like 3.5 minutes per game with Ben and like 14 with Dwight? I found that bizarre because in a lot of ways, he's the perfect complement to Simmons. We wanted Simmons to be able to play with a guy who is good on and off the ball for so long, and now we kind of have one, and we're not doing that at all. It's weird.
Yeah, I think with Shake, like, I feel like it's been sensory overload with him a little bit this year. Just there's a lot of stimulation going on in the court, a lot of decisions for him to make with the ball in his hand, and just be handed the keys and just be told it's free reign. You do what just do what you got to do to make plays. It's been a lot for him to handle in his first real year in the rotation, where there's at least a scouting report on him, and he's starting to figure things out. But I think that's why we've seen such up and down play from him as a scorer and as a shooter this season. In his, granted, he's had injuries, he's had this, he's had that, he's been in and out of the lineup a little bit, so he hasn't really had time to really find a great consistent rhythm and start to hum with the offense. But I feel like with especially with this team, with Tobias and with Matisse and Maxey to some extent, Doc has been like so big on just the straight line drive play. I would think that with a guy like George Hill there, they would love to get Shake back to that just catch and shoot or catch and go off the dribble like they have with Tobias. And they've really gotten Tobias back to where he was in the Clippers from a statistical standpoint. But yeah, you make a great point about the lineup with Simmons. I don't know that I believe that the closing lineup is just going to be the starters. My gut tells me that in terms of not having to go defense offense subbing every other possession and down the stretch of games, that you would want to have George Hill there. But I think there is some pause for concern with that because I feel like Hill's been hesitant to shoot the ball. I thought up until last night it was kind of like, well, wait, what? There's something missing here. There's something not right with him. Maybe it's the thumb. Maybe it's not. What do you think of that closing lineup with Hill?
Yeah, I think if you we've seen it once or twice in some of these games that we thought would be routes, and then they turned really ugly. I forget if it was the Spurs or the Pelicans or both, where Doc did insert George Hill at the end of the game, and I was like, this is what we expected when we got Hill. Why are we not seeing that more? Of course, you're going to have to put George Hill in for a massive moment. So you would think you'd want to get acclimated to that a little bit more than they have. Because I don't know if it's going to be Seth. I don't know if it's going to be Danny, but you could kind of feel like he'll be burrowing into either one of their minutes if either is not great in a particular game or situation. I think having George Hill's ability to run a pick and roll or be a secondary ball handler is useful. One of my biggest concerns going into the year, which has been in a lot of ways like quelled by their ridiculous plus minus of the starting unit. But I was worried that they were going to need someone like Levine or Lowry to initiate. They've gotten by just posting up Joel, and it's worked all year. I didn't know that it would. Like, he never had this level of mid-range before. So they've kind of skirted what typically finalist contenders have as someone to be a primary initiator in the half court. But you'd think George Hill might unlock that to another level if given the chance.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's like interesting with the whole secondary ball handler thing, because really what that sort of invites is more Simmons pick and roll and then dive play that I think in short spurts, especially with a guy of his playmaking prowess, where he can just read a defense and kick to shooters out of the short roll, is so critical that you have a point guard that can make those passes over the top of defenses who are scheming, who can actively adjust to what they're showing on the fly and then find Simmons on that short roll. Because once you have him in the middle of the lane, it's either going to be a dunk from him, or with him, you never know. It could be a layup, but it should be a dunk with him, or a kick to a shooter like Danny Green in the corner, who, by the way, has just dominated the corner 3-point shooting in the league this year. I think he's like top of the league in attempts and made and and whatnot. But I think having that secondary ball handler that is wise enough to know when to make the play, to know where to make the pass, to know how to read a defense on the fly is so critical to unlocking Ben in the half court. So that way they can't just wall him off or just sag off of him so much. I mean, and they can sag off of him still because they don't have the threat of him, rising for a mid range shot. But that's still going to let him get it close to the basket enough where a defense is inevitably going to help a little bit too much, and that's going to free somebody up for a look. Now there is another guard on the team that has seemingly stolen the hearts of the fan base, which I can't say I blame people for loving Tyrese Maxey. I definitely think he's going to be a really nice player in this league, and I think he was a great pick by Daryl Morey to get him at 21. He fell right into their laps. Now typically they'll take a guy that can't shoot because under previous management it was, are you 6'11" and bigger, and can you shoot? And if the answer was no to the latter, or no to the latter and yes to the former, it was, well, that's what we're taking. We're going to take a guy who can't shoot. We're going to try to make him shoot, and then that's that.
Yep.
But with Tyrese Maxey, it's been up and down for him, his playing time this year. I think he's been a guy who, if you look real closely, there have been up and down moments, but from a very far away, if you squint your eyes a little bit, you see a guy there that just incredible speed, nice handle, can shoot a little bit off the dribble. it was so cool for Sixers fans to see a guy that could actually take and make floaters because they hadn't seen that in forever. Clearly, that's not what Doc wanted. He said it last night. Like, we got him away from the floaters, and just told him to get to the rim, get fouled. I'm curious. Do you think that Tyrese is going to get minutes in the playoffs?
I do. I think Doc has even said, like, I'm not scared to use a 10-man rotation in the playoffs. And I think he said that in part because Maxey has sort of come on lately since the All-Star break. He has found ways to get to the line. I think he like doubled his free throw rate, getting away from those floaters a little bit. They're still pretty. He's got a lot of those, like, not to make a ridiculous comp, but he plays in the style of like a Tony Parker and then sometimes like a Steve Nash where he's got those wrong foot finishes, off-timed finishes. So I'm not saying he's going to be anything like them, but you could tell that he's maybe modeled his game after some of those smaller, quicker point guards with a lot of crafty finishes. So I do think he'll get some run. His jumper looks better and better to me. I think he's got the makings of a pull-up shooter and a spot-up shooter at this point. I don't think that when there's like a critical juncture of the second half that we're going to see him, unless we're talking about like you're up 1-0 on the Knicks and it's the third quarter. I could see them going to him there. But if you had to steal a game on the road, I just get the sense that Doc's going to go with guys he trusts a little bit more.
Yeah, I would agree. Granted, it's the Orlando Magic, and they're nothing to that you can laugh at them if you want. I mean, it was that bad. But I thought I took away, like, I was really impressed with his just man-to-man defense on Cole Anthony. I thought he was disciplined on his feet. His low center of gravity is a huge asset to him. I think.
Who were you more impressed by yesterday? The Celtics G League unit or the Sixers G League unit?
I got to hand it to the Celtics. They did hold together for as long as they could, and ultimately, the Knicks had to sweat a little bit. But that Sixers team, I thought that starting unit was going to blitz Orlando, and to their credit, they kind of opened it up quickly. But I've generally been very impressed and very sort of, I guess, encouraged by what I've seen out of the quote unquote G League guys that you mentioned. Like Paul Reed, I think is going to be awesome. Whether I don't know that he's going to be an all-star, but I think he's a really nice diamond in the rough type pick. Isaiah, we'll see. I think his defensive like positioning and help is underrated. People think the Chargers just like they happen to be the right place at the right time. Like, no, you position yourself actively and anticipate charges a lot of the times.
Can I just say I hate that play. Like, I watched him take that amazing charge yesterday.
Yeah,
but his head and neck was so close to like the knee of the guy he fell into. That, you remember the movie $1 Million Baby?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm terrified. Like, one day someone is going to kill themselves trying to take these charges in the middle of the paint. And I don't understand why the NBA allows that. And also the one where you position yourself while the guy's already in the air. These plays are just so insane. You see like 20-year-olds trying to make them. It's like, oh, stop this.
Yeah. I took one charge in my life, and I got up like I had just like I ran back on offense. I thought I just scored a point. It was great. And I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do. This is how I make it in the NBA. Just take charges all day, every day.
My high school coach used to teach us how to do it, and he was like, you grab a pair, you grab your bleeps, and just fall back. And I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna do that. I don't know if I ever actually drew one. I took the hack. I didn't get enough playing time to foul out anyway. So
that's right. Like we would line up and basically run into each other and take charges, and it was just sort of like, well, this is really just more of an escapade to just get us beat the hell out of each other.
Definitely felt like I was gonna get a concussion if I did it.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the league would be best suited from both a player health standpoint and also by a result, a legal standpoint, if they did something to mitigate the potential for those plays.
Yeah, but credit to Joe, he took a great charge, and that's a veteran play
for sure. but I would agree that I think Maxey's role is going to be very situational.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think if you make it so that way he's the spark plug, you're kind of inherently giving him a little bit of a more like pressure kind of role, because you're basically charging him with, we need you to get us back on track here because we got nothing. And that could be a lot for a rookie point guard to handle. But I do agree with you. Like those situations where if it's the middle of the third quarter, the Sixers are down by 6 to the Knicks or the Hawks or the Charlotte Hornets, and they're up 1-0 in the series already, throw Maxey in there because he can tie a game up by himself and get the fans back in it, and then everyone wakes up. So I do agree with you. Do you think that he's going to be here next year?
Tyrese?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think that the safest choice is always to say yes, because no one single trade is ever like likely to happen.
Right.
I do think he'd be on the table. I think Tobias Harris, I think Ben Simmons, I think the whole team except Joel Embiid could be on the table in the right deal, given Daryl Morey's track record and openness to probably talk to any GM in the league. So I don't think he would put an untouchable on anyone except Joel. And even then, if someone said, we'll offer you Giannis and Middleton, you'd have to think about that. Probably do it.
Yeah, it's a good point. If the Bucks did that, I would think like John Horst gets drug tested.
They would never do it. I'm just saying, like, I think Daryl Morey is the kind of guy who would just say, I will listen to anything anyone has to say.
Yeah, you're doing your job. You're evaluating all options.
Yeah.
That's the name of the job. I would venture to say that he probably won't be here next year.
Yeah, you think they'll try to bring in someone like a big name?
I've hinted at it. My sense is that they're going to try to bring in like a Levine or a sign and trade to get Lowry or whatever, or something along those lines. I think at the very least he'll be floated in a lot of rumors all throughout the summer until something either does or just doesn't happen.
If they could get Levine with a package sent around Maxey, they have to do. I mean, that would be really exciting for a team who got the 1 seed without him. I do think he's made the conversation about that Lowry trade more interesting with his elevated play.
Oh yeah. I don't know that I would trade Maxey plus other assets for Lowry at the moment. Like Lowry's a great 1 to 2 year player. Like realistically, if you trade for Kyle Lowry, you're basically saying we need to win a title in the next 2 years, and
Right.
that is if they don't win one this year, which at this point all bets are off. I mean,
and a lot of people would say they do, given Joel Embiid's age.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a valid point. I just think that there's like a potential for Maxey. Let's say that he really is Jamal Murray, Jr. Reincarnated or whatever. Jamal Murray's not dead, but that's the general.
You just killed him and brought him back.
Yeah, no, me and Zach Lowe are just killing off Jamal Murray here on our respective podcasts. But I would venture to say he would be a starting point guard for this team in a year, 2 year time. Whether that means Ben's gone or Ben's been moved to a different spot on the court, whatever. I think he certainly has that ceiling that people salivate over out of the point guard spot in the modern day. But this summer is a big summer for him in terms of his future here. So we'll see there. But the Sixers have a really, I don't want to say easy, because I've learned to take nothing for granted in this league. But they have a very favorable path to get out of the first round. It's going to be Boston, Charlotte, Washington, or Indiana. They are, I believe, 3-0 against the Knicks, 3-0 against Charlotte, 2-1 against Indiana. So that's 8-1. That's 11-1. 11-1 on the season against those 4 teams in the play-in spots. Is there anyone in those playing games that gives you some sort of fear?
Yeah, I'm one of those fans. Did you ever follow like Bill Parcells? He would talk about what it was like working with Bill Belichick. He'd be like, yeah. Belichick, we called him good Bill and bad Bill, and like he was doom and gloom. He would always come in and talk for like 2 hours about every little thing that could go wrong. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like what I'm like as a fan. I think about, I'll be worried whenever they have their matchup. But yes, like you said, it broke almost as beautifully as you could have imagined it. The one thing that I think would give me a little pause would be the Wizards if Bradley Beal is fully healthy. That's not an 8 seed. That's more like a 4 seed. Certainly better than the Knicks as they're currently playing, given the firepower and talent there. So I would rank it like at least like to play the Wizards. Hopefully they'll beat the Celtics.
I think they will, by the way.
Yeah, I heard Bradley Beal was limping. I didn't get to watch that game. He was like 8 of 27. So I'm not sure that he's right. That's a huge variable to all of this.
For sure.
If he's playing with like a bad hamstring or hip, then this conversation changes. I don't really know. I might have to watch that tape to see if they end up with that matchup. I will. After that, I would say I might like to. I mean, obviously, I would like to play the Hornets first. I don't know if that's obvious, but
I think they would sweep the Hornets. It would
yeah,
be. I don't think any of the 4 games would be within single digits.
I would really like the Hornets. And after that, I'm a little bit torn between Indiana and the Celtics. I know that Tatum might just, like he could win the scoring title next year and no one would be surprised. So he might have like a full series where he hits all these shots and nobody should take. And he hits all of them and scores 40 and the Sixers win in 5, but every game comes down to like 3 points. I wouldn't be surprised. And Marcus Smart always worries me because he's always like fighting with Joel and like hovering around his knees and diving. So I wouldn't be thrilled, but I could go 50-50 on Pacers Celtics.
Okay.
Brogdon's tough. Sabonis is tough. Justin Holiday is playing well. So I think that one would be close. I feel like I'd rather the Pacers, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I think people think that like, oh, they're all broken up internally. The idea of that sounds a lot better than the actuality of that, I think.
Yeah.
And like I mean, they're in it. TJ McConnell says everything's fine. Not that. I mean, I wouldn't expect them to come out and say, yeah, this is garbage. We're done. But I also, I think when you have an entire team say, like, there's all these rumors and then this one guy comes out and says, yeah, we're good. I think it says some things, and not even says we're good, but says like that was a disheartening story to read because I know it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty grandiose statement in my mind.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think Wizards are a problem, not a problem, but I think they're a team that can give you some fits.
Sixers would win the series, but it's the one that would worry me the most of those choices.
Yeah, I think it's the type of thing where like you win game 1, they win game 2, maybe, and then you have to go to Washington, power through there, and then you come back and win it in 5. Maybe it goes 6, but I generally think the Wizards would pose some problems because it isn't just Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook who is just driving triple doubles every night now. It's that Davis Bertans has now found his stroke. He's now like the shooting gravity he has is very real. Rui Hachimura has had a really good year, and they have a bunch of pieces there that are painful for the Sixers in terms of getting over screens and low gravity and speed. And then when Russell goes out of the game, guess what? You get Ish Smith coming on the court now too, who's also very good at
He's given us problems over the years in Detroit.
Yeah. He's very good at he's like a hot knife through butter. He can carve in, carve out. And he's very quick with the ball, and that poses problems with the Sixers. But I generally think that anyone they take in the first round is going to be 4 or 5 games and then go home.
I hope you're right. Yeah.
If it isn't, then they shouldn't be then we shouldn't be thinking so highly of them in the first place because they're the 1 seed. They shouldn't have that many problems. But I want to go over to the second round now because that's where things start to get interesting. You have the Knicks and you have the Hawks there. And I'm sure for you it must be interesting to see have the possibility of a Knicks Sixers second round series because where you grew up, where you started, and then now that you've been converted to a Sixers fan, things change. So I'm sure for you, obviously, it sounds like you want the Sixers to win that series, but you must have some heart in both sides, I would assume.
I might surprise you. I root pretty hard against the Knicks.
Wow.
I have actually been, as a Sixers fan, I've been rooting really hard for the Knicks, which has shaved years off the end of my life the last couple weeks, because I wanted this bracket, the one we have now. I did not want to play the Heat. I know we'll probably get to that. But the Knicks are a typical Tom Thibodeau, scrappy, overachieving group without a ton of talent, and you've seen it over their last handful of games. They had a signature biggest win of the season against the Clippers, which allowed this scenario to break for Philly.
Mm-hmm.
But then they lost a game they should have won against the Lakers without LeBron James, because like Derrick Rose wouldn't box out Wes Matthews, and they lost on a tip-in, which took them to overtime.
Right.
I would love the Sixers' chances. I know the Knicks play super hard. I know they would slow that series down to an agonizing crawl, and we would hate watching it. It'd be ugly basketball, especially the way we post up. And it would take Ben Simmons, as he's currently used, out of that series quite a bit. But the Sixers would win that series, and they would probably look better doing it than they would beating the Wizards.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, because I think like the Knicks guard game, like they're basically they're still starting Alfred Payton,
which is awful to watch.
Yeah,
awful. I feel
it's
so bad for this guy. Knicks fans are killing him. Tom, what are you doing?
Yeah, he's something, man.
Oh.
And then, I mean, Emmanuel Quickly was actually one of my, he was in the top 10 for me in my mock draft, and I thought I was crazy, but it turns out that he's actually been quite good for them.
Quite good, yeah. He looks good. I like him and Maxey. Heck of a backcourt.
For sure. But they don't really have an experienced guard there. Besides Derrick Rose, that's really going to give the Sixers a ton of penetration.
Well, they have your boy Burks, who's been playing really well.
Alec Burks, that's right. Alec Burks has been very good.
If they were to just eliminate Payton's minutes and go with one of or two of Burks, Rose, and Frank on the court the whole game, that would be a much better team than they are as currently utilized.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really, really good point. I would agree with that. The Knicks, by the way, right now, I believe they are top 4 in the league in points allowed in the paint per game. So they're pretty airtight in the paint, which I think poses a little bit of problems. Like you said, it takes Ben out of the game quite a bit because he's going to have a hard time getting things over Julius, getting things over Nerlens.
Yeah, but Joel knows that Nerlens is too small to cover him.
Yeah,
Nerlens gets in foul trouble, and then you're putting in. I don't think Mitchell Robinson will be ready. Broke his foot. I think of Jones. So, and then Joel has also demolished Norvel Pell, who's on their bench too, throughout his practice career.
Right. Yeah. And no, it's true. And so, yeah, I think Joel would certainly pose an advantage there. But I think that Knicks team, they wear you down. They physical. They get very scrappy with you, just as Tibbs always does. That's his MO. I would think that series would go 5.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it going 6. I think I would have plenty to worry about once that series was set about, what the Knicks might do. What if they stole game 1? But while we're currently hoping for the perfect path, I see the Knicks as an important step on that path. I would love to play them and love to worry about that relative to the Wizards and Hawks.
Let me ask you this. Do the Hawks scare you?
Yeah, the Hawks have a lot of sneakily loaded. What?
They scare me.
Yeah, they're kind of loaded. Like Lou Williams, Trae Young, Bogdanovich, who's playing really well. Kevin Huerter can shoot. They might get Hunter. They might get Reddish for that series, right? Then they've got the Rooster, Danilo, and Capella, he'll make one of the all defensive teams who does a good job against Joel Embiid. And Nate McMillan has just done. He kind of makes our old assistant coach Lloyd Pierce look bad at this point because they've been so good under Nate.
Well, so it's interesting that you say that. I did a little bit of digging recently on that whole thing, and it turns out that the numbers with I can't find him right now. It's somewhere in my tweet history, and it's not worth going back in time for that. But it's certainly that like the numbers aren't that outrageously far off compared to like before the firing versus after the firing.
Okay.
So it's you almost like have to deduce that there is a bit of an element of like luck to that, but at the
Yeah,
same
you're
time,
probably right.
but at the same like here it is. It's like they were their point differential was like zero under Lloyd Pierce, and their defense it was getting it like they were giving up more points per 100 possession by like point 0.2 than they were scoring. So I mean it was like barely it was like you're talking about a couple possessions over the course of like their entire 34 first game docket where they fired him at 34 games, whereas now under Nate McMillan it's like a differential of plus 3.2 and 25 and 25 and 11. So there's a little bit of luck there, I think, but I think they've generally been much better in terms of just cohesiveness and um, chemistry on the court. But I think they have depth at the wings that the Sixers do not have, like you
They
said,
sure do. Yeah.
with Herter, with Bogdan, Gallinari, and just that's just to name a few.
And
So
Lou.
Andre
Yeah.
Hunter, Lou, and then on top of that, I think a guy like Trae Young can give them a lot of headaches in a series where
He already gives them headaches.
yeah
He's been on some really bad teams that beat the Sixers. Like they beat Jimmy Butler and the Sixers. They beat us with Horford. They feel like they go like 500 against us over his
yeah
career.
yeah no and it's really a lot of it is like it's him just going through pick and rolls and just like daring them to not fight through the screen or to drop to drop Embiid to the rim to funnel him, and he's like, okay, well I'm just gonna pull it from 15
He
feet.
does a damn good James Harden impression. Yeah,
Oh my God, he does.
he can
He
do.
does contact with the best of them.
He does. He can really see the whole floor. He can hit threes even when you're on him. I mean, not to the same degree, but he might go take one from like 10 feet further out, no problems. And then when he gets into the paint, you never know if he's going to just stop abruptly and you foul him from behind. He would pull a couple of those on Matisse, where Matisse is hoping for a block from behind, and then he just sort of stops dead in his tracks, hits the brakes, and it's a shooting foul.
Yeah, I can see him being the type that would take Matisse out of a game like in the first quarter with like two or three
of those quick fouls. Yep,
Yeah.
knowing the scouting report that he's coming from behind. And if not, he either hits a floater or he can lob it to Capella, just like Harden used to do. So
yeah. No, I think the Hawks can be problematic. That being said, who would you pick in that series and how many games? I think you pick Philly, but I'm curious how many games you
Sixers Hawks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say Sixers in 6.
Okay.
Steal one in Georgia.
So the thing about like the Sixers in 6 scenario now with them having home court throughout the playoffs, it means that they have to win the game 6 on the road.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're credible enough to do that. I think it's going to be either 5 or 7.
I looked at it like a lines maker and thought of the same thing you just did. Like it could be 5, it could be 7. So 6 is the safest, even though it's not likely that they would close it out on the road.
For sure. So you are right. We are going to get to a team that's a little bit further down south than the Hawks
or Orlando Magic.
Yes, them. That's right. Poor Steve Clifford. He goes from the Hornets to the Magic, and then now they're basically in a rebuild.
Yeah, seriously.
But Miami Heat are a team that people they either I think all Sixers fans hate them, and even the media I think is very much anti-Heat because of what it stands for in terms of like Jimmy Butler gets to rub it in the face, and then also the fan base is just very volatile down in Miami. I was very, very happy to see the Knicks win yesterday and to see the Heat lose to the Bucks on Saturday, because basically it was a prison sentence for the Heat because they had to go through the Bucks now and the Nets to even get a shot at the Sixers. Should after that loss to the Heat, or even during the loss, or even before the loss, were the Heat a team that you were scared of?
Oh yeah, I was petrified of the Heat. I mean, the Heat, you don't want to win the 1 seed and then have to get stuck in a bracket with like the Wizards playing like a 4 seed and then a 6 seed who went to the finals last year. That would be horrible. And I know that a lot of fans look at it from a machismo perspective, and no one seed should worry about anyone. I don't look at it that way at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so many champions who are the one seed earned two soft matchups to begin the playoffs, and that goes a long way. And the Heat do, in a lot of ways, present matchup problems. There's a couple coaches who know how to and have the personnel to defend Joel Embiid at least as well as you can. And we saw a couple games ago. I think what happened was Joel was battling the non-COVID flu, almost didn't play, almost didn't even fly down.
Yeah.
And then he saw, I forget who was officiating the game. Was it Tony Brothers and company? He saw that they were not going to call anything on his first two post-ups. Like, Bam bodied him so hard, and Joel was like, "Oh, it's going to be one of those nights. This probably isn't worth it. I'm gonna hit a few jumpers." If they were at home and it was a playoff game, he would have gone back to the well.
For sure.
He would have had to go 100%. I think he made a business decision there, similar to the one he made when we lost in New Orleans. He was like, okay, they're going to let Steven Adams do anything he wants to me. I'm just going to hit these mid-range shots or miss them.
Yeah, I think he took some Tums for the game, and then he saw what was happening. It's like, I'm gonna
not this one.
I'm gonna go drink some water on the sideline and watch. But yeah, I think about Jimmy Butler. He'll pull out his bag of tricks at a time when he knows he can spite you. He's the type of guy that thrives off of that. Like, I want to rub it in your face and spite you. Type of star. Like, he doesn't shoot jumpers all season except for like a couple of mid rangers and here and there. All of a sudden, he's pumping in 4 threes against the Sixers, and it was just like the biggest fu after he refused to shoot him for a month when he was a Sixer.
Yeah.
Now, like, I'm gonna pump in 4 on you. And
he had some beef with Brett Brown, and now years later, he's Klay Thompson against us forever.
Yeah, and it's that team would have had me watching a lot of film to try to figure things out for them, and I think fans can act all macho, like it's the one seed.
Yeah, no thanks.
And we have this and we have that. Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are two of the best, and their record, they are where they are this low because of COVID and a bunch of injuries, but they are a very tough out in a 7-game series. I actually probably would have picked the Heat if the Sixers played them in the second round.
Yeah, it would have been a 7-game series, I think, or a 6-game series. And if they were facing a closeout game in Miami, I wouldn't feel good at all. I think I would pick us to win in 7. But either way, it's close to a coin flip type of series if everyone's healthy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm so glad that the Bucks wanted to win that game, and that the Knicks were able to beat the Cambridge Cannons out of Massachusetts.
That's right. So real quick before I let you go, I'm curious, like, when you watch the Nets and the Bucks. I mean, I know the Bucks won the season series. The Nets didn't have Harden, I think, for 2 of those games, and then I'm not sure if Kevin Durant played in the first game in Brooklyn or not, but I know they were shorthanded the last 2, and that's why Milwaukee won. But I'm guessing you'd pick Brooklyn in that series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. Like, I feel like all season long, there's been someone spouting some sort of narrative that things are not going to work for these Nets. They're not all into basketball. There's only one ball to go around. Kyrie's crazy. These guys are jerks. They're going to party. No. This is by far the most talented team in the NBA, and they've been good enough to beat almost anyone with 2 of their big 3. Can you imagine if they were fully loaded for a playoff series? No thanks.
Yeah, I would love to see the Nets and the Bucks just beat the hell out of each other.
Yeah, 7 games and the Bucks win. That would be a dream.
7 games, it goes triple overtime every game. You have like Jokic-esque like exhaustion from everyone on both sides, where they're like missing free throws a little bit short at the end because their legs are so gone. So I'm assuming you would pick the Nets in a series over the Sixers of the conference finals.
I would.
Okay, I would pick Nets in 5.
You think they just might boat race the Sixers?
Yeah,
They could go 16-4 over these entire playoffs, and I wouldn't blink.
who, the Sixers or the Nets?
The Nets.
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like I'm guessing you go 5 or 7 with the Nets.
See, it's difficult to bake in, like, because you can't just grant them full health, right?
Right.
So if you were to play the odds, you'd say there's a better than 50% chance that at least one of their big three is not quite right for any particular series or game.
Right.
So I think it's not safe to say 5, because there's a good chance one of them is going to be, a little bit balky. But yeah, if they're 100%, I agree with you. It could be like 5. It could get really ugly. There's just an unprecedented level of 3 top, 7 offensive players on one team. Maybe 3 top 5 offensive players on one team.
Right. I mean, I'm thinking about it like, first of all, for all we know, the Nets could have very easily been healthy all season long and just having like practice scrimmages just to stay in shape, but we're generally just acting a fool. And
the Harden injury has been legit. He's such a gamer; he always wants to play, and they've been pretty open about that. But they were conservative with Durant's hamstring. I think he took plenty of extra time just given the severity of his injuries.
For sure. So with the Bucks, it sounds like you're kind of confident with the Bucks
that the Sixers would win.
Yeah.
It's not so much that I'm confident. I think it would be a 50-50 type of series. It's just that we kind of know what they are. We know their ceiling. They're a really, really good team. They could absolutely win the title. Drew Holiday gives them another dimension, and they could go into Philly and steal game 1 and then just close us out in 6, even though 2 of those games go to overtime. You saw it when they battled the Raptors, who ended up winning the title. There was a double overtime game. That series was really close. I do think the Sixers would have a good chance. Home court there would be absolutely monumental, and I love their chances. It's kind of the devil you know. I don't think the Bucks have quite that ceiling that the Nets potentially do.
Okay. So last thing then, who are you picking out west? Because I gave my prediction. I think I gave it a couple weeks ago. I think I might have been a little premature, so I'm sweating it a little bit. I went with the Suns.
Oh, I like that.
I love the Suns. I think they have the perfect bit of versatility mixed in with size, and then they have you couldn't ask for a better veteran leader at point guard, and they have a young superstar they can go to whenever they need to. I am all in and sold on the Suns.
I like that. I would enjoy that finals very much. I know the Sixers would not have home court, but I would love their chances. I picked the Clippers.
Okay.
Clippers Nets have been sort of my pick ever since probably January, February when Harden went to the Nets. And I do think they're the odds-on favorite per Vegas now. They're in the 4-5 slot, so they got a decent road. They got to beat the Mavericks, and then they have to beat the winner of Jazz Warriors or Jazz Lakers. So they could end up with the Lakers, which would be tough. But if the Lakers beat the Warriors, then they'd have a much nicer bracket. They'd have to beat your Suns, and then they'd have to play either the Trailblazers or the Nuggets.
That's right. Dave, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter, Dave Early, or is it David Early?
I think it's David Early.
David Early, early morning on Twitter. Read my work at Liberty Ballers, and I host a podcast called No Particular Hurry.
There we go. Dave Early, thanks so much for joining, man.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and keep up the great stuff. I love following you. Congratulations on wrapping up a full season of coverage. It's been really great to have you on the beat.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's always warming to hear somebody appreciate. It kind of validates that the late nights where I'm thinking there, why the hell am I writing this story on for Concord Mazda 1 in the morning? And then,
I pretty much have everyone who I think is good on notifications on my phone. So I see a lot of your, everything from an injury report to a hot take.
Thoughts and prayers. Take care, Dave.
Yeah. Take care.